I actually think over the last 18 months, the impact on the future of work and with it, the future of HR is far, far more profound. Because it's not just digitalization that drives the change. It's this other, much bigger, maybe more insidious factor called the democratization of work, which we have experienced in spades. Our growing ability to decouple, detach work from its traditional confines of space, time, and structure. And what we're seeing with many organizations is this pivot from a traditional focus on growth, efficiency, and return to a much stronger focus on agility, flexibility, and resilience. And there are 5 things that underpin that pivot. Firstly, more of a portfolio-based approach to work. Stepping back and thinking about how do we build in redundancy into our workforce? How do we get to the optimal combinations of automations and talent? We're seeing a massive spike in interest in the gig economy right now. In some respects, it's in response to the inability to fill different roles, but in other respects, for different organizations, it's a way of hedging their bets. How do we create the agility to actually flow talent to work beyond the traditional notion of the frictional cost of jobs? It's something that I know Josh talked about yesterday. It's one of the reasons why we've seen so much interest in talent marketplaces like Eightfold, Gloat, Hitch, and we'll talk some more about that. Increasingly, as we think about the agile enterprise, how do we shift more decision-making to the edges of the organization as opposed to the center? Because the thing that we saw with COVID is the organizations that were much more agile, that had distributed decision-making, were the ones who responded the fastest and the best as they saw different threats emerge and as they saw different opportunities emerge. Equally, and I think this is going to be really important, how do we think beyond ourselves? We saw so many great examples during the pandemic of companies shifting resources, sharing costs, sharing risks, whether it was McDonald's sharing its talent with Aldi in Germany, whether it was the Scandinavian airline systems repurposing their talent that had basic medical training to work in the healthcare systems in the Nordics. And then the last part to this, which I think is really interesting, is this emerging digital parallel world, if you will. The use of digital simulation and scenario modeling in order to be able to test decisions in a safe environment. I had one CFO say, as they are engaging in more digital simulation, I have the luxury of breaking the business in this digital world. I don't have that luxury in the real world. But I think those two are going to converge as we see and as we sort of sit at the advent of Web 3.0. I think we're going to start to see the convergence of physical, augmented, and virtual reality in shared online spaces. And I know certainly Mark Zuckerberg has written extensively about the metaverse. We're starting to see emergence of organizations getting to those combinations. And with that, some really significant implications for HR. And then the last thing I'll say is, I think we're going to be wrestling with this eternal dichotomy. You know, we saw this after 9/11. We saw this after the financial crisis, and we certainly saw this during the pandemic. This spike as people pivoted from focusing on growth and opportunity to looking for certainty and stability, a very human response, right? But I think for the private enterprise, i.e. most of us in this room, it's impossible to promise certainty and stability, you know. In the face of the volatility we have in the global economy, the best we can do, and it's kind of a must-do for all of us, is the promise to our workforces of continued relevance for a changing world. I will keep you relevant whether it's with me or without me, and the promise of clarity as to how that world is changing.